Have you ever taken refuge in a storm shelter? Maybe last night. Or maybe even hid in a safe room in your house and locked the door. You hear the sirens outside wailing, the alarms, the storm beating against the house, the rain, the winds, the hail. And you only have one thought in mind. Oh, dear God, please let the storm pass over without striking the house. That's exactly how the apostles felt. That's why they had locked themselves in the upper room. Because the storm that was raging in Jerusalem was not a tornado or a hailstorm, but a storm of violence and persecution. They were afraid that they also would be arrested and crucified, just like Jesus had been. When the shepherd disappeared, the flock was struck and they scattered and they went to hide. What happened? Jesus appeared right there through the locked door and said, "Peace be with you, do not be afraid." And in one moment, the storm disappeared. The apostles saw his hands and his feet, they saw the wounds, and they believed. And he breathed the Holy Spirit on them. That's when the Holy Spirit entered into the apostles. They became the very first Christians. Now, Thomas wasn't there. The next Sunday, the Sunday we celebrate today, a week after the resurrection, Thomas was there. And what did he have to do? He had to actually touch Jesus. He had to put his hands into the wound, touch the hands and feet, see the wound. Then he also said, "My Lord and my God." You know, there's nothing worse than being trapped. The thought of our house caving on us in a storm, or even being trapped in a prison, being arrested, being imprisoned, locked behind the bars. It's for that very reason that the Emeritus, Pope Benedict, visited a prison this week in Rome, and he said a mass for the prisoners to give them the Easter hope that even while they're in prison, that the Lord can come to them and that they can change their life. Because we know that the worst place to be trapped is not in a storm shelter or even in prison. The worst imprisonment is self-imprisonment, the imprisonment that comes from sin. When we lock ourselves away, we become our own jailer. And the sin is itself the punishment. Think about nature. You know, nature is, in a way, unforgiving. If you put your hand in a fire, it is going to burn. If you were to leap off of a building, you're going to be seriously hurt or killed. Nothing's going to stop the laws of nature at that moment. And even between ourselves, we're not always very merciful. Sometimes we let people off the hook, but a lot of times we really twist the knife in and make it even worse than it has to be because we're not forgiving. But luckily, at the end of the day, when we're judged, it's not going to be nature and it's not going to be ourselves. It's going to be our loving, merciful Father. So no matter what we've done, as long as we go seek forgiveness, the Lord forgives us in an instant. That's why it's so important to keep continuing what we started in Lent, going to confession, now that Easter's here, not to turn back to the old ways, but to continue in the joy, the light of Christ, that it'll shine through the whole year. Because we don't want to wait until next Easter to go to confession again. We want to keep going. And actually, we'll have an opportunity this afternoon at 3 p.m. We're doing the Divine Mercy Chaplet, saying the Rosary. Father Irwin will be leading those, and then I'll be hearing confessions, if you can join us. Well, let's think about Thomas the Apostle for a moment. When we say the Creed, we say the one holy Catholic and apostolic faith. Apostolic, of course, means that it comes through, directly handed on to the apostles when they were breathed the Holy Spirit into them, and that they went and handed on the faith unending until today. Who are the apostles of today? We are. We are the apostles because we're the ones who hand on the tradition. We're the ones who are sent out to hand on the tradition of the faith. Now, if we don't do that or don't do it very well, then there's serious repercussions for the next generation. So we have a responsibility and a great honor, and it's our own salvation to do so. God only commands the things that are for our own salvation. Sometimes it seems challenging, but it's really not. St. Thomas the Apostle, he was doubting, and then in one moment he touched Christ and he said, "My Lord and my God," and he never stopped saying that. He went all the way from Jerusalem through Syria to India, to southern India. Thomas the Apostle was the first one to bring the faith to India 2,000 years ago, over 2,000 years ago. So in the 15th century, when the Portuguese arrived in India, they wandered down south and they met these Christians who were obviously from the Syriac tradition, and they had no idea how they had gotten there so early. Well, it was because of Thomas the Apostle, who died and is buried there in southern India. That's also why you may remember Father Thomas. Many Indian Christians are named Thomas. So we have to be just like Thomas the Apostle, having touched the Lord. Or do we need Jesus to appear in the room with us today? Some of us might. Some people do. Some people will not believe in God until they have died, been resurrected, and Jesus himself greets them and they see his wounds. They will see his wounds in the glorified body, and we can only hope at that moment they will say, "My Lord and my God."